welcome everyone. We can get started. Welcome to the first installment of our Gold Series. Congrats. What is next? I will start us off with a land acknowledgement before we get started. I can recognize that we're on an Instagram live right now, but for me, I'm currently in Kingston, Ontario. It is important to recognize the history and presence of Indigenous peoples on the land I am currently on, and where all of us are as well. I'm specifically right now also close to Queens. So Queens University is situated near the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte First Nation. This First Nation community consists of the Mohawk peoples who belong to a larger cultural group called the Haudenosaunee. I would also like to note that the Anishinaabe peoples have a deep connection to this land as well. In regards to me personally, my parents were both immigrants from Iraq and gave me the opportunity to be born in Canada. So when I think of my relationship to this land, I think of all the opportunities I have had throughout my lifetime, only possible because of my privilege. I also think about confronting my settler complicity on stolen lands and how I can use my privilege to disrupt and dismantle settler colonialism beyond this land acknowledgement. Although all of our this organization, the alumni and Queens does amazing things, we would not be here today if it were not for settler colonialism and the assimilation of First Nations people. So I do ask that everyone reflect on their personal relationship with the land they are on today and how each of us came to be where we are. Additionally, I'd also like to note that today, October 4th, is the National Day of Action for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. So today we do remember, and if you haven't, please visit the MMIWNG final report so you can be educated. So I will also introduce now our panelists, and then we can get started. So our first panelist is and everyone on the panel, please correct me if I say your name wrong. Emilio Frometa, Art Sci 17 and MIR 18. Emilio was a Queens Gales football captain and is a member of the Agnes Benedictine Tricolor Society. He's the founder and executive director for Austin Mentorship and currently works for Quick Start Early Years in Ottawa. We also have Siobhan McDonald, who's a Sci 20 from mechanical engineering. I like that. I'm a Sci 22 civil engineer. They grew up in Mabou, Nova Scotia, where she fell in love with sailing. Siobhan chose Queens for its sailing program and was on the Queens sailing team for all 4 years, serving as the keel boat captain in her 4th year. She is now working as a junior estimator with Acon Incorporated in Toronto. Next, we have Alicia Hobson, Art Sci 17, Geography. Spent her first year at Bader College, then was Chief Marketing Officer of the Nyantende, please try to say that. If I said that, okay, cool. Foundation, and co-president of the Awareness of Sexual Assault Prevention Committee as a student leader. She got her first job at, we're a little bit right here, and yes, she got her first job at HISO, a Canadian outerwear company, where she did social media and public relations. She is now the email marketing specialist at #Homestars. Alicia is also the social media manager at the American Marketing Association. Cool. And I'm your host, Zaid Kassim, Sci 22. During my time at Queens, I held the position of Vice President, Student Affairs for the Engineering Society. And then just last year, I was the president of the Alma Mater Society. So I guess we can get started into our, conversational discussion questions. I guess all of our questions are surrounded around, being a new grad and what it's like kind of transitioning after, university and being an undergrad and now heading off into the career world. So I guess my first question for everyone is, how is the new remote work reality treating everyone? Is everyone working kind of remotely, hybrid? Is it different? Has it changed in the last couple of years? Has it been challenging to cope with? And if you have any, I guess, advice for new grads, what would you say? And we can start perhaps with Alicia. Maybe if you want to start us off, not to put you on the spot or anything.
No worries. Can you guys hear me okay? Just making sure. Amazing. So I am fully remote. I do have an office located in Toronto, so I'm based in Toronto. I'm able to go into the office whenever I like. I just choose to work remotely. It's just more fitting with my lifestyle. I work alongside with my partner, so it kind of just gives me the flexibility to like manage multiple tasks. What advice I would give is that if you are going to be working remotely, I think it's really important to create a space that fosters work. So I try to make sure that I don't get distracted by other things because it's super easy to get distracted. So setting up like a designated workspace that I can like take down and put up, and making sure like my apartment's not that big. So make sure that like my workspace is my workspace, and then when it's not my workspace and time to shut off at the end of the night, I make sure to tear it all down so I don't feel the pressure to continue working after 5 p.m. or whatever.
Awesome. Siobhan, I know you dropped off the call briefly. First question was just about the new remote hybrid reality in regards to, working, and if how that has gone for you, and if you have any advice for recent grads and stuff. I'll maybe pass it off to Emilio first to give you like a second to to think about that
Sure
one.
thing.
Yeah, thanks. For me, I was working right before the pandemic, and then going through that whole thing of where that big transition happened, moving to remote work. Currently, I'm in a hybrid role, but I think we're very fortunate to be in a time where we have a lot of the technology that can get adopted that helps make that working world a reality. Virtually. It also really helps with work-life balance too, right? Like you get to eradicate, in some cases, depending on where you live, lengthy commutes, and vice versa. But the biggest thing that I think, and we may touch on it later, but you're in a work with multiple generations of people, and they all have their different levels of expertise with the technology that you're working with. But I think at the end of the day, something that I always try to get across, and something that I think is really important, is just having strong communication, right? Because everybody can interpret an email differently, or a Teams message. So if you have a task that you're being given, or if you have to deliver those tasks to a team that reports to you, or different colleagues across the organization, I think in this time where we may not be face to face, you may not have that second to, hey, let me pop in the hall and talk to you about X, Y, and Z. Clarifying these things is really, really important, because when you get everyone moving full steam ahead on something that we don't know where it's going, that's a lot harder to fix up after the fact. So that's something that I think has been a big adjustment, right? I'm a big in person. I like talking things out, and now I've had to change that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, even I relate to that as well. I mean, last year was kind of like, I mean, the last work experience I had was technically, I guess, AMS related, with a president of AMS, and last year's half online, half remote. And when it was remote, it was really tough to like build those connections with folks, I think, at first, especially when we were like just starting our roles. So yeah, it's one of those things that was challenging to contend with, but is definitely possible. But it requires some thinking for sure on how you do those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Cool. So oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's also worth adding too. I think Alicia brought up a really good point. If you are working in your living space, which was really easy to separate work from before, especially in these roles where we're coming out of university or college or wherever you're coming from, right? You want to be able to make sure that you have that clear definition of kind of, this is workplace or this is work time, because it became really easy at the beginning of the pandemic to, you're working, you're creeping. Oh, look, it's 7, 8 o'clock, and I'm still responding to emails. Yeah, it's no problem because I'm here. But as the pandemic waned on, like, that's something that's not sustainable, and it's important, especially you're gonna be starting off a career, and you want to prioritize that mental health at any stage you're at. But it's very important to keep that.
Yeah, of course, it's important to have associations with different things that are separate, so you can unplug when you need to. Siobhan, do you what would be your advice?
Yeah. So, yeah, since I graduated Queens, I've actually kind of had all three possible situations. I graduated in 2020, so COVID was just getting started. And so when I started work, I was fully remote. And for a full year, I was remote. So I had a lot of the same challenges. Then I went to a hybrid role. So I had that balance too. And now I actually go in every day. The team that I'm with likes that. So I've got the commute. I've got the day-to-day office. And yeah, throughout it all, I think what's really been important, and especially now with companies, you see so many people maybe choosing the days they go in and, taking that sort of hybrid setup. I think in terms of like starting a job and getting connected with the people you work with is if you have that opportunity to go in, you really can't beat, making that connection with people in person. And, if you're lucky enough to have a hybrid role, which I think is kind of awesome, it's pretty great in terms of flexibility and work-life balance. But actually being able to, see people, connect with them, get things done, I think really goes a long way, especially when you're starting a job. People will notice that for sure and really appreciate when you show that initiative and take the time to go in. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of good points have been talked about from all of this. It's interesting time we live in to have these choices, which is pretty cool.
It most definitely is. I guess that your answer kind of alludes to the next question a little bit. I think, beyond the pandemic and, working hybrid remote in person, I think we can all appreciate that when you're still in university, there is still some level of structure regardless, like I have courses, I have assignments, I have this, and then there's a lot more structure. However, I guess I want to get everyone's take on, how you navigate this newfound unstructured freedom when you actually enter your career. Because it's different. You don't have, courses all the time. You don't have those continuous touch points a lot of the time than you would in your career. So I know for many young alumni, including myself, who like just graduated, that can be kind of like tricky to navigate sometimes. So does anyone have like any advice on how you and even if you had the personal experience kind of similar, how you kind of made it through that a little bit? And anyone, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to it. A really big thing for me is while I was at Queens, I was on the sailing team. So sports and school was a big part of my daily schedule and my daily life. So it was really important to me that I kind of kept that into the work life. And I've been really fortunate that I'm in Toronto now and I'm able to sail, but having those, really making sure I was signed up to a club or, if you're into sports, finding maybe like a community rec league or keeping that, if that was a part of your university life and that brought you a lot of joy, it's so important to keep that, I feel like that consistency going into work life. Because, yeah, it is so, it's really different. And you go from, the grind of school to now things are kind of moving at a slower pace. You're not going to get a promotion every year. It's like you're not advancing every year. Things a lot more fluid. So keeping the things that, I found brought me relief or, like a break from school in school, kind of getting that into my day-to-day life here, it's trivia night with friends after work or anything like that, really helped kind of keep me sane, I think, going into the work life.
Yeah, definitely some good points. Alicia or Amelia, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I can jump in. I love that and definitely tried to like stay consistent with my friends once I finished. In terms of work, I was like very organized, and my friends can attest to this that I tried to stay very on top of things. And I like to think that I know a lot more than I actually do. And going into the real world and having a job where you're not necessarily getting a detailed outline or a rubric of what you're going to be marked on in terms of like your actual day-to-day job, it was a little kind of daunting. Am I doing this right? Am I answering all of the questions that's being asked of me? So I think for me, it was a matter of like finding my own voice and making sure that I was asking the questions that needed to be asked. And never felt hesitant in class to ask questions when needed. And that's why there were TAs and professors that had office hours, right? Like take the one-on-one times if you have them, or like a mentor if you can find space to kind of help you navigate these like transition periods between school and work. I had a great manager in my first job, and he really, really helped me and showed me the ropes. And I'm still like really good friends with him to this day. And anytime I have like career questions, I always go to him. But I think it's a matter of like, yeah, just like asking questions, finding someone that you can kind of lean on for support. It's so crucial to have like a team, like a team and a group supporting you, like we did at university, right? Like we were leaning on our friends or study groups and stuff, or extracurriculars. So I think finding that in your workplace is really important as well.
Definitely agree with that. Milo, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, for sure. I think obviously I can only speak to my experience, but coming from similar to what Jamal was saying, like I played on the football team. I was finishing off a master's degree, so the structure that I had at Queens was unbelievable. And once you kind of get to the end, it was like kind of jumping off a cliff, where you get to create that structure. And I think for me, something that I found was beneficial was I just needed to find out what pieces I need to have in my life and kind of build that structure so that I could still be successful, so that I could still have good mental health. And I think for me, it was very holistic, right? You go from, being around all your teammates all the time and being in a structured class schedule and having that built in, to now, going to work, but also being with a smaller bit of a team, not having those built-in socialization things with your friends all the time. So it does require, for me, it required a little bit of work, right? You have to adjust. You have to, well, for me, I found that it was going out and getting these things, right? Like you need to go and make the time to, whether it's a small social gathering or a big social gathering, find them. I think it's, again, for the mental health piece, like for me, keeping up regular times to go to the gym, that was something that, replaced that kind of football thing that I had. Also, keeping up volunteer commitments so that I can, still feel that I'm giving back, still feel, connected to the community. These are all things that, and it's going to be different for everybody. But for me, I found it really helpful to try and build a little bit of a schedule and a little bit of that structure. And, if I were to tell my football coach my structure today, it might be a lot different than what it was like at Queens. Maybe not, the full-time job commitment, but it's something that's always a work in progress too, right? I think as you navigate that career, and the flexibility that you have, maybe potentially later on in your career versus early on, it all has to be factored in when you're trying to figure out what that structure looks like for you.
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks for sharing, folks. I feel like that last answer, Emilio, kind of segues into our next question. I think all three of you mentioned friends. And I guess one of the biggest things to contend with when you graduate is you're like, oh, where'd all my friends go? A lot of the time your friends kind of going all over the place, and sometimes that can be pretty challenging. So I guess my question is around, do any of the three of you have any advice in regards to building social, professional, and even spiritual networks, and how you folks went about doing that, and maybe sharing a bit of your lived experiences in that regard?
Don't all jump at once. I can kick us off. Funny, like I was very fortunate to have like majority of my friends from Queens actually live pretty close to me. I was in Toronto. They were all kind of in the GTA. So we made it a priority to always see each other. So even if it was like a weekly or monthly like Zoom call where we all got on the phone, especially during COVID, like we made sure to like do something at least once a week. We have like group chats and Snapchat groups and Instagram groups. Like we have a group on every single social media platform. So we were talking all the time as if we were still at school, like getting lunch together. And we actually made it a priority, me and my girlfriends, to do a trip every 2 years together as like a core group. So we've done, we actually went to the 25th reunion of Vader because we all met at Vader. So we went there, and then most recently we went to Portugal. And so we just like, we made the time to prioritize our friends. And outside of friends, like in my personal life, I joined like networking groups. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Monday Girl, but like Monday Girl is a women's networking group, and you can meet amazing people. So it was just an opportunity for me to like step out of my comfort zone, meet people that I've never met before, and I'm not that much of an extrovert. So just taking like leaps of faith and trusting yourself that, you know, you'll find your footing after, and do something that scares you a little bit, and find those groups because they're there. So find the network, do your research, and you'll find something that will fit your personality and your lifestyle.
Yeah, totally agree with that. It's always possible to, if you step outside your comfort zone a little bit and actually prioritize looking for those networks, they're always there somewhere. It's all about finding them. Either Siobhan or Amelia, do you have any things to add?
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I was pretty lucky too. I'm from the East Coast, but when I graduated, I came to Toronto for a job, and luckily, a lot of Queens people are in Toronto. You know, it's sometimes you can even walk down the street and run into someone. It's we're pretty fortunate to have such a great community. But yeah, I totally agree, especially, you know, being someone if where you end up going to work is away from family, which is my case. My friends became such a big part of my, I guess, daily life. And even at work, I found when I had the opportunity to go into work, I went because I really wanted to meet people, you know, make these connections, make some friends. And so I was lucky. I ended up, when I started commuting in my hybrid part of my work, I found a carpooling buddy, and we would drive together out to Mississauga a couple times a week. And just little opportunities like that, when you look for them, just like you said, they do appear, and they make a big difference too. You never know what kind of opportunities are going to come your way. So yeah, definitely being open and looking for those connections wherever you can find them. You never know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, if I could add on to, I think, I don't know, for me it was obviously understanding kind of like my schedule and what my needs are, and then looking for social opportunities with those, right? I think, you know, when I started off at a larger organization, so my team was fairly large, and you know, I like to think that we had a very good working relationship. It was a lot of fun. You know, we fostered a pretty good collaborative environment where, you know, these are colleagues and these are friends that I still speak to today. And I think, you know, that's the easiest one that's on the chart, because you spend a lot of the time at the world of work, and that's something I don't think we look at too much, is we, you know, and it can go into the topic of the first job, it can go into the topic of our careers, but at the end of the day, you know, we leave Queen's University on a trajectory to probably, you know, be working in some degree for the foreseeable future, which could be 30 plus years, right? And so you want to make sure, well, this is something that I want to make sure, is that the people that I'm interacting with in the environment that I'm in, I'm enjoying it. So I think, you know, finding friends and like interested people at work was huge for me. Additionally, right, like some of the places where, you know, you decide to spend your time, whether for me it was the gym, you're going to meet like-minded people there for me. You know, volunteering, right? Those are opportunities where it's places where people come together. And I think one that kind of gets overlooked is during the pandemic, your neighbors, right? And it's something that we think in university, right? Like at Queens, there's your housemates, your teammates, or even people in the student ghetto, where these are all people that you all went to class with. You're likely friends with them. You can't walk down the street without not stopping to talk to someone. But I found during the pandemic, I became fairly close with a lot of my neighbors, and these are people that I wouldn't have known beforehand because you're running to work all the time. But it gave a really cool opportunity to, I think, reestablish a sense of community that I know for myself, it's something that I feel like was missing during the pandemic. So these are all, I don't know, all things that I like to kind of, it's like anything, right? Like you still have to, you get out of it what you put into it. And I think it's something that I was doing already. So it's nice to be able to find those communities kind of where you are.
Yeah, most definitely. Cool. Well, I think that Siobhan, you mentioned briefly about when you wanted when you could go into work that you would because you wanted to go meet everyone. I guess in regards to the next question, I had a question about what recommendations or advice you folks have with regards to communicating with coworkers, because I know that your university, you're around typically many folks who are the same age the entire time you're at your undergrad, but when you're thrown into your career, it is no longer all folks just the same age. It's multi-generational realities. Folks from all sorts of parts of the world, and I know you have that as well at Queens. But what advice would you give to folks? Because I know that sometimes there can be different ways of communicating with folks and different backgrounds and all those sorts of things. Does anyone have anything to perhaps add to that?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to it. Especially at my job, I definitely felt the difference because I was probably the youngest by like 20 years, maybe, for the first full year and a half, pretty much, that I started working. So it was definitely a shift from, the sailing team friends to day-to-day class. So what I found was when I was able to go in and start meeting these people, it was definitely a different kind of relationship, but still, I found when I went in and they kind of saw me as a younger person just starting out, but putting in the effort, asking them questions, showing that, I care about the job and I wanted to learn more, I found kind of made them open up a little bit more. So you get there early and you get your coffee and you ask them about their weekend and you slowly get to learn, I found, a bit more about the people I work with. And even though I didn't necessarily hang out with them on weekends because they're busy with their families and things like that, it was still really nice. I had a lot of great kind of mentors that came out of those relationships that, helped me figure out what I want to do at the company or transition and move on. So I found that even though maybe I wasn't going to find like a new best friend that I'm going to hang out with all the time after work, I really found a big value in getting to know the people I work with, even though they were from all different parts of the world, all different ages. It was still really important and really useful, probably to this day.
Yeah, your answer kind of in my head, I'm thinking right now, and I can relate quite a bit. I mean, last year I did my 5th year in civil engineering, so I felt like an older person on campus. But this year, I just started my master's, but it's a very like PhD heavy lab, and a lot of these folks have like kids, and I'm like a little baby in the lab.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's like
you definitely
it is like
become
so weird.
almost like everyone's like work kid. I felt
Yeah,
like
it's really
sometimes.
weird. And I'm walking, and I'm
Yeah,
like, hi everyone. I want to learn things. It's like, but then like otherwise, just walking around campus, I'm like, oh, I feel old. Like
yeah,
it's so weird
it
to like kind
is.
of switch between those two like realities at the same time. Alicia and Emilio, do you have anything to add?
Emilio, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Yeah. For me, I think, uh, building off kind of what you were saying, Siobhan, about the mentor piece, um, I was really lucky in the sense that I had a couple people kind of reach out. Well, we fostered kind of like a little bit of a mentor relationship with my first where my first landing spot was. And the biggest thing that I took from that was they could obviously sense I was eager, but um, it was in a sense of obviously you're going to observe the things around you, and you see how different people interact, and you're trying to learn about where you can fit in, right? But I think that goes a little bit further than just how people are interacting, and it's how they carry themselves, how they conduct themselves in their work, how they complete their work, everything from how they present. And I think for me it was described as like trying to take tools and put them in your tool belt. And you know what? You may get your tools from a varying different, like, wide group of people. You may go to a briefing meeting and you may see someone that presents something unbelievably, right? You may, speak with a manager or maybe a director or whatever your organization's hierarchy is, and you may see, hey, there's something that they're doing that I think is really great. Maybe their delivery on this is not so great, but you can still take and learn from the pieces of things that you admire, right? So something that I think I really found beneficial was just trying to treat almost, the majority of the interactions as really big learning opportunities. Another thing I learned quickly too was that it's much, much easier to get clarification and to ask questions at the onset as opposed to proceeding through something like you have the answer, but you don't, right? Clarity is huge, and well, for me, clarity helps me do what I need to do, but it also helps, the team do what they need to do, or colleagues. And I think it also plays a big factor into that multi-generational piece at the workplace. You have a whole bunch of people that are going to have different perspectives. They're going to have different uses for their time. They're going to do things differently just based off of, who they are, where they're from, all these different factors that go into it. And clarity is going to be huge to help you navigate that. Getting clarity, I think, for me anyway, is something that I found really, really beneficial in communicating with people in the workplace, for sure.
Yeah.
Alicia, over to you.
Thank you. I'll just build on both of your points, because I think that I felt the exact same way. When I was working at a nonprofit, I was definitely like the youngest person by at least 10 to 15 years. But I made it my other job to find common ground with everybody. So although there were people who were parents and have families, like they have activities that they like outside of just their family. So I ended up finding one of my work friends. We would always go to Indigo together. This is pre-pandemic, obviously, but when we were in the office, once a week, we'd like go walk over to Indigo, because like we found that we both really loved books and loved shopping. So that was kind of like our common ground. And although outside of probably Indigo, we didn't have a lot else in common. She had a 2-year-old daughter, and I was literally just starting my career. So I think it was a little different, but I think it's finding that common ground. Don't let age get in the way either. I think we're so quick to think that like, oh, I'm young, they're looking down on me, like they can't learn anything from me, and I have so much to learn from them. But I also think it goes both ways as well. I definitely think finding confidence in yourself and who you are is also important, because we did a lot to get into where we were, even if we hadn't necessarily had any career experience. We did a lot in university. We learned a lot, and we got a lot out of our experience there. So I think not like making yourself small as well. So just having faith that you know what you're doing and they hired you for a reason. So I think that's kind of the approach that I took. Like I wouldn't be hired if they thought that I was incapable of my job. So I made sure that like if I knew something, I'd not necessarily stand my ground in an aggressive or mean way. I would just kind of have the points and the facts to support my answers, and that's kind of how I moved through my career. And now I have friends that are like in their 50s, and I'm like, we're friends. We have nothing in common outside of maybe like this one little thing, but I definitely like, I look at them as a friend the same way I look at my Queen's friends. So Yeah, that's all I had to add.
Yeah, definitely a great message around, leveraging the experiences that, young alumni have had at Queens, and not taking that and not diminishing that in any way. And because those are all fantastic experiences, and we were all very privileged and lucky that we got to go to Queens, and a great place to learn. So amazing. Well, I guess my next question, because all of these are kind of interrelated, but you folks keep alluding to the next question each time. But this one, maybe more like conceptually, maybe I guess it's kind of tough for me to even answer a little bit, but I'm hoping maybe you folks have some good points. But how would you folks recommend, because I know one of the big things when you start your career is like, how do I prove myself? Because I feel like, as somebody who's just starting their career, it can feel like you have to prove yourself. And I guess, did any of you folks feel like you needed to prove yourselves? And if so, how did you do that? Or is there even an answer to that? I guess all of those lumped into one, but anyone, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I can hop.
Emilio.
I got a lesson that I learned pretty quickly, and it's a sense of like, you don't want to say yes to everything, right? Because you got to realize that when you get into that working environment, there's going to be a lot of pulls on your time. But something that I think I try to carry with me now, and I still remember when my manager pulled me aside and told me how this has been something that's been important in her career. It'll probably serve us right, given the line of work. But it was, say what you do and do what you say. It's simple, but it really kind of hits on that integrity of what you're doing, right? If you're going to say that you're going to accomplish a task at a certain timeline, hopefully you deliver on that. And if you're going to do something, right, like, outline that clearly. And it's good for expectations with everybody. It helps create kind of your integrity at that workplace. And then you find out kind of, as tasks start to pile on, as responsibilities start to build, it's something that I try to carry with me all the time. It's something that, you may not be able to always meet all the time, but it's something to strive to. And that's just a saying that I've found extremely valuable as I've started my career.
I love that. I love that piece of advice. And I feel like someone has said something to me along the way very similar to that. But I definitely agree. I think stick to what you know and you do well. And I always think, like what I said earlier, along the lines of like, ask for questions, ask for clarification, like be clear in when you don't know something, because I also think it's really easy for us to say yes, yeah, I got this. And then like you get off the Zoom call, and you're like Googling what your manager just asked you to do. And you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I think for me at least is like, there were certain things that I knew like the back of my hand, hands down, I will get it done. But in certain situations when I was asked to do something that was maybe a little bit out of my comfort zone, I would just be open and honest, saying like, I haven't done this before. How do you want it done? Can you walk me through it? Because I also think that shows courage and initiative to your managers and whatever your team, your coworkers that you're working with, that you don't know everything, and you're going to let others know when you don't know something, right? So you're not going to drop the ball. You're not going to miss a deadline. You're not going to do the work incorrectly. And you may still, even with clarification, but I think always ask questions, be clear in what you can and can't do. So.
No, definitely good advice. And I think I guess one of the challenging things at first can be like, even like learning the skill of asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Just say yes to everything. I don't want to ask anything because they're gonna think I'm dumb. and then you realize like, oh, I really should have asked what I'm doing. So I think like that's I think one of the biggest skills that like I recommend to build ASAP is to get over the fear of like asking questions, because I think like employers kind of expect you to as well. So also being like, okay, it's okay if I want to learn and all those things, and it's better that I know what I'm doing so I can do it properly. And also not saying yes to everything at the same time. It's all about a balance at the end of the day. Siobhan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's so important. Just being honest in the workplace is really just such an important thing. And yeah, it's a good skill, and people, will respect you for asking the silly questions and just trying to learn and figure it out. I think a big thing for me, I definitely agree with all of that, and it really resonated. But it also, at least where I'm working right now, I'm working with people who have been experts for like 20 years and just have such a wealth of knowledge and are so good at what they do that I think a big thing for me was just to realize it takes time too. Like, you're just getting started. I kind of had to go easy on myself, I think. It's I would work so hard and study after work and these little thing and come into these meetings, and people's knowledge would just totally blow me out of the water, and definitely made me feel, I think, small at times or a bit silly. It just seemed almost daunting, like, how can I ever learn as much as they do or know as much as they do? But I think, yeah, it's important to just be honest and realize that it takes time. These people have been working sometimes for a really long time. And yeah, just be patient with yourself. And, that kind of people you'll gain a good reputation as long as you're there and you're doing the work and you're willing to help. It goes a long way.
Yeah, thanks for that last point. It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. There's no rush in the career. Don't need to rush it, for sure. And I get that when you start your new career, like, whoa, there's a lot of really, really experienced people here. But it's always good to just take a step back, learn, and let life do its thing. Cool. So I guess we're kind of at the time right now where that's all the questions I think I have for you folks. But maybe I'll turn it for the last 10 minutes of our Instagram live to the audience to see if perhaps we can maybe just a little Q&A right now and see if anyone has any questions for any of us in regards to, starting out your career, transitioning as a young alumna, as a student, and then to young alumni and all the aspects of life. I'll check right now to see. Have no questions yet, but I'll give it like a second because I know people are probably brainstorming.
Yeah, I'll ask a question. Oh, sorry, Amelia, me and you just are so in sync.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what do you think was the most challenging out of all of the aspects of becoming a student to like graduating in a young alumni? What do you think was the most challenging aspect? Like, was it work? Was it personal life? Transitioning, moving back home? What do you guys think?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, the most challenging part was I almost thought that I had to know what my career was going to be like right away. When I jumped into my job, kind of realizing, yeah, what you said before, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I definitely struggled with that. For the first little bit, figuring out I was such a goal-oriented person. And I really struggled with that kind of lack of structure or knowing when I really wanted to know when I was going to advance or something like that. So, yeah, I think that was probably the trickiest part for me. But yeah, you have to realize things take time and you can figure out things as you go. Your first job is probably not going to be your forever job. If it is, great. If it's not, that's okay. Just learn every day, take what you can. But it takes a bit to learn. So yeah, that was the trickiest part for me, for sure.
Yeah, I want to build off that 100%. I think it's really important to realize that, like, and let's rewind the clock to not having that first job, but trying to get that first job. I personally, I think I was pretty fortunate in the sense that like my structure didn't, and I'm not really like a get super stressed out person, but I could definitely feel a little bit of self-imposed stress that I was kind of putting on myself. And fortunate to have well, I have a mentor who kind of laid it out to me similar to kind of what you were saying, Siobhan, that the first job, sure, yes, it is important. It's a necessary step, but it is really one piece of maybe 30 plus years of a chapter of your life. And you know, you're not going to hit the home run right off the bat. It's not going to be the perfect dream gig. It very well could be, but there's going to be, you know, many opportunities for growth and change. And it's the pressure that I think that a lot of people may feel trying to get that application proper, trying to get through those interviews. When you walk in, you sit there and go, "What is this 5 interviews for? What is going on?" Right? It's that put so much pressure on yourself, and I think something that I constantly kind of told myself, and I had told to me, which I feel very fortunate, is that there's always going to be other interviews, right? There's always going to be different things to apply for. You're not going to, you know, what's the Michael Scott, you know, you don't hit all, whatever, all the shots that you take, right? It's it's those things where it's okay to mess up because there's going to be other opportunities, right? And I think something we've talked about a lot of this conversation has been, you know, self-confidence. Um, it shouldn't be us telling us that we can't do it or that we're not good enough, right? Let someone else do that, you know, because the world is going to do that to us anyway at some point. But it can't start with us.
That's very good advice. Very, very good point. We have two questions that have trickled in. So I guess our first question kind of helps a little bit that you kind of alluded a little bit, Emilio. But does anyone on the call have any tips for networking / interviews on the topic of interviews?
Prepare.
I 100% prepare.
Prepare is a good idea for sure.
I actually, like, when I'm interviewing for jobs, I like go online and I Google like common interview questions. And I will like write out my answers to the interview questions, and then I'll interview myself or get someone to interview me, and I will just practice, and I get their feedback, and they'll be like, "Oh, you spent like 5 minutes explaining your resume, like try to shorten it." And then I will just like look at myself in the mirror, practice and prep. And then also, like, if you do have the opportunity, try to reach out to someone at the organization. I know that may seem so daunting to like reach out to someone on LinkedIn and be like, "Hey, I know that you work at this job and I'm interviewing." But honestly, like, I feel like all of us can agree, we've made time for other people who have reached out about our work. It happens all the time. Don't be afraid. Reach out to that person, get their opinions, their feedback. They may respond, they may not respond, but most of the time they'll make time. So definitely prepare, do your research, reach out whenever you can.
Yeah. I feel like a good rule of thumb is that when you're reaching out to people, just always expect that people are a lot nicer than you think. People aren't going to be like, "Nah, go away." Well, hopefully. Maybe they will, but hopefully not. Generally, I think people are pretty nice. And on the topic, I guess, like you mentioned, Alicia, like the mirror, that's like what I think I do all the time. I'm always like talking to myself in the mirror. People are like walking by, like, who's Zaid talking to? No, just talking to myself. Maybe weird, but it helps. It really helps. And like even like my facial expression, if I'm like talking too fast, those sorts of things, I think like kind of mimicking how I would in the interview is really helpful. Anyone else have anything to add? Tips and tricks?
Yeah, I got a quick one for you. I'm doing it right now, but you know, a notepad in an interview, it's always a good idea because sometimes they throw multiple questions at you. Another one that I think that no one really talks about is like, you know, if you're getting barraged with questions or if you have something that you're maybe not sure on right away, you're allowed to say, "Can I take a minute or two to compose myself and get an answer for you?" right? They can totally expect that. They understand that if they're going to give a really complex question, that it may take a little bit to get, you know, the adequate answer. So don't be afraid to ask for that. If you need an accommodation in an interview, don't be afraid to ask for it, right? Outline these things at the onset, because you don't want to beat yourself up after the fact saying, oh, I should have done that, or oh, I could have done that, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
Like for me, I don't know, I will have a pen and paper at hand in every meeting or interview that I go into. That's something that I just find is very helpful. Another one, and I think Alicia, you alluded to it. It's just kind of in the prep. I think for me, it was just really finding a way to organize my thoughts. And another one that I learned, which I'll give a shout out to the MIR, the Employment Relations Program at Queen's. They prepped us pretty well, in the sense of that if you're looking at a job poster, a lot of times the questions that you can expect to receive in an interview are going to be in some of those qualifications that they're looking for. You can map out for the most part what the questions are going to be just based off of, let's say, the core competencies of the position. And you can build examples that can speak to those things. And for me, that's something that really put me at ease when I kind of got that gem, right? You know, you think the mirage around interviews and, oh my gosh, you're going to an organization, what are they going to ask me? Well, it's already laid out there for you. So that was a gem that I was handed that I think I found pretty useful throughout my career.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess really quickly want to throw in a tip that I guess which sounds self-explanatory, but hear me out, is actually answer the questions. That may sound like oh, obviously, but like truly, I think a lot of the time when you're just starting to do a lot of interviews, it's common that people are like, oh, I need to throw in all of these things. I need to explain all of these things that I want to get through in my interview, and a lot of the time that can lead to like confusing answers in the interview, or maybe not quite answering the question. So I think like in an interview, it's good to just like take a deep breath, listen to the question, and answer the question, and actually answer the question. I guess the root of the question is something that I noticed, and when I think of, actually kind of calms me down sometimes. Siobhan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just a quick, I guess on the networking part, really, I found it's, my dog is in the background if you're hearing weird noises. He's not too happy right now. He wants to go on a walk. I use, like right here, right now, the Queens community is so incredible. And so don't be afraid if you see anything like this happening. Like, people are so more than happy to help a fellow Queens student out. I've done it. Some of my friends have done it. Because yeah, we're here, we're doing it, we're working, we're meeting people. And I am just always so more than happy to give any advice, to connect with people who might be in similar fields. So use this incredible resource, and don't be afraid to reach out to people. You know, go on LinkedIn, you see they attended Queen's University, shoot them a message. I did that myself when I was searching for jobs, and you never know when it's going to lead. But the Queen's little alumni, it's so powerful, and it's so welcoming, and it's really incredible. So yeah, that's definitely my tip, is use that.
Tricolor blood does run deep. And I guess we have time for one more question that I have in front of me. But someone in the comments is wondering if any/all of you could share any mistakes you've made in your first few years of your careers, and how you've dealt with making those mistakes.
There's a lot, probably. Yes. Yeah. Off the cuff, I think the first one, and you know, it's almost like if you go to I relate it to, you go into a whole bunch of things that you want to put on your plate, and then you end up going, well, how am I supposed to eat this? I have 200 items on my plate. I think it's the same as work, right? Like, you can't say yes to everything and then expect to have good results, right? You need to understand what your limitations are, and and also, you know, set realistic timelines and realistic goals. And that's a little bit of a humbling process, but I think for me, that's something that I really found helpful is to learn, is to go through that process, and you get a better relationship with yourself, but it also helps you in executing what your kind of day-to-day roles and responsibilities are supposed to be. So just long story short, don't pile your plate too full.
Yeah. And I guess really quickly, just so I can throw my chip in really quick, is when I've made a lot of mistakes in all sorts of jobs. I think the biggest thing is that whenever I've made a mistake, it's always, I think, recognizing I've made a mistake and having the integrity to admit I've made the mistake and learn from the mistake, tell whoever it is that I've made the mistake, and use that as a learning tool, because I assure everyone who maybe is still looking to start their career or is, you know, is scared of making mistakes, that typically people are expecting you to make a mistake eventually, and I think the goal is that you don't make the mistake again. So the only way to do that is to learn from it, recognize it, and actually get some guidance on how you avoid that. A lot of time it can even be like gaps in learning, which is snazzy in itself. It's good to let people know about that so you can go and, you know, fill in those gaps. So having that integrity is something important. Siobhan and Alicia, do you have anything to add?
I think you hit the nail on the head for that one. Yeah, I totally agree with all you just said.
Amazing.
I can quickly add, but yeah, I can also say that I've made a lot of mistakes. And I think something that we've touched on earlier is just like clear communication, because especially in the day and age of like virtual meetings and virtual like everything, you can't just turn around and ask someone for clarification. I think it's so important to clarify in advance before you get like 3 weeks into a project and you're like, damn, I wish I asked this question like at the beginning. So I think asking questions as much as you can, getting that clarification to set you up for success, because I think that's the most important thing, is making sure that you have all of the resources, all of the information that you need to be successful in your job. And also it's your managers and directors roles to make sure that you're set up for success in your role. So I think also that's something that you like, that took me a little bit of time to understand, is that I thought I had to build my own success. I thought I had to do my own onboarding. I thought I had to be the one like reaching out to people and making these connections, where it's like sometimes your manager is there to help you navigate that and give you those tools. So communication is key.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing, everyone. And with that last point, I think we'll wrap it up there. So thank you to Alicia, Siobhan, and Emilio for sharing your tips and tricks, your experiences with folks watching, and young alumni, and even soon-to-be graduates. I guess reminder for folks watching, make sure to register for Money Matters and the Harness Your Hustle events, also part of the Gold programming, on Thursday through the link shared in the chat, which I think should be popping up soon-ish, in the chat, to qualify to be entered in a draw to win a 30-day in-stage VR interview simulation, or our grand prize of a pair of AirPods Pro, which is pretty cool. Yes, I do see in the chat asking if this will be recorded. Yes, this has all been recorded and we put on Instagram live soon after this is ended. So thank you, everyone, for watching, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your evening.